Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. As a few folks have mentioned, we had a little conference over at the Etton Center last week, and it was, unfortunately, it was invitation only, and I wish we could have had all of you there. One thing about our conference was that we established the rule that we wouldn't walk out of the conference and talk about what each other had said. And this was so that everyone could speak freely and openly and perhaps even radically. And so I had the great job of presenting a bunch of great ideas from people and not being able to give them credit for it. So just remember, these aren't all my ideas. The intention of our conference was to pull together recommendations and potentially develop new ways of thinking for our state legislature to utilize as they look at water issues. We've seen a lot of chaos in bills over the last couple of years as folks have struggled to try to address water issues. So part of the effort in preparing was to go back and look at all the, or as many as we could, reports that have come out in recent years pertaining to water recommendations. These included reports like the WRRI conference that Senator Udall hosted, the Senate Memorial 8 report that Senator Padilla led that was very useful. And the reason I mention this is because as we have these events, I hear a lot of folks say, oh, geez, it's another water conference. You know, I'm not even going to bother. I've been to so many of these things. But in my mind, it is a continuing conversation that we're having. It's an ongoing dialogue. And we just need to keep building these incremental steps, these incremental realizations one upon another. And hopefully that'll get us where we need to be in time. So the theme of our conference that we chose was to look at law and policy in New Mexico through the lens of resilience. And there's a lot of scholarship on resilience as it relates to water, and I shouldn't be the one talking about it. Dagmar is actually the published academic on resilience on our panel. So feel free to hound her with your more detailed questions. The basic concept is we want to have a legal system around water governance that allows us to absorb and accommodate disturbances such as drought or population growth or changing temperatures, while still retaining the basic functions of supplying human needs and ecosystem needs. So we're sort of moving away from these concepts of sustainability to something that may be a little bit more dramatic, that we just want to be able to deal with these changes as they come and survive these changes and hopefully thrive. Part of why we impose this rule to let people talk creatively and not worry about having their ideas thrown out in public is because it takes a lot of courage in New Mexico water to propose new ideas. The standard question you've all been asked, I'm sure, is whose office are you going to go over with that idea? And you know, we're all going to have to do better, and we're all going to have to take a hit at some point. And so the ideas that we throw out, and I'll throw out some at the end of my talk, these are really seeds that we're trying to plant in your minds so that these ideas grow as the years come. And so we encourage you to be courageous as well as you work within your realm. We looked at a handful of topics as they emerged from our conversations, and it's interesting looking at today's agenda how parallel you're going to be hearing later about water reuse, about desal. I'm excited to see Randy Shaw's presentation. Laura's going to talk about the Rio Grande Water Fund, which is really all about better watershed management here in New Mexico. We're going to hear about aquifer storage and recovery and economic development. These are all concepts that rose up in our discussions, and at the Etton Center, of course, we're tasked with and sort of alone in the job of trying to figure out the best law and policy to help you all implement these technical ideas. Before I get into just throwing out a few of the suggestions that came out of our conference, I wanted to talk a little bit about the way of thinking that we embraced at the conference, that we talked about, and that emerges from this notion of how to make ourselves water resilient. And this may be a little mushy for the scientists in the audience, but bear with me because your mental approach to things really has a huge impact on the outcome. So bear with us, policy folks. One of the main ideas that we talked about and that we and that seems like a trivial thing, but the development of social capital is really critical prior to times of conflict. We've heard examples of folks involved in international disputes who were having incredibly hard time breaking through their negotiations until the leads of the negotiations were brought in who had been former college roommates. So having those relationships in place before conflict occurs is really critical, and that goes for agency-to-agency relationships, tribal-to-federal relationships, neighbor-to-neighbor relationships. And so it's a little bit of what I think of as barbecue diplomacy. And in fact, the Senator was mentioning an event he's having this Saturday. It's fantastic to see folks who are really putting a lot of effort into just getting along and getting to know one another. This is, it may sound trivial to those of you who spend all day working on hard technical issues, but it really is critical in times of crisis. And as part of that, I appreciate the Congresswoman bringing us all together to get to know each other a little bit better. And that's why the time you spend out in the halls will probably be a whole lot more important than the time you spend listening to me today. Another element that became apparent was characteristics of our agencies. We realized that for our agencies to be successful in times of challenge, we need to have high levels of public trust and public confidence in our agencies. This, we believe, comes from embracing inclusive decision-making, in particular decision-making that recognizes the risks and the concerns that have been identified by the people on the ground, by the constituents, by the citizens, the folks that the agencies serve. We also talk about the importance of institutional flexibility. And having been an agency attorney myself, working for the University of New Mexico now, which is a remarkable bureaucracy. Learning how to adapt an agency is a very difficult thing, and it takes strong leadership to be willing to say we're going to do something differently, and to be willing to take those challenges. Again, that's where the courage comes in. One other idea that I really am excited about, and it's something that we've seen a lot of academic work done on, and I get to see in action every day, is polycentric governance. By that, we're referring to embracing multiple layers of governance. I sit on the board of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, and within our Conservancy District, we have community ditches, we have acequias, we have large farms, hundreds of acres, we have the cities, we have the Conservancy District Board itself, we have the state engineer and the Interstate Stream Commission to deal with, we have the federal structure, the compact with Texas. We have so many layers of governance, and if I just sit at the board and think about what we're doing at the board level, I am failing everybody. I need the help of the executives. I need the help of the federal government, and they need us to be cooperating with them. So recognizing those multiple layers of governance and embracing them, not trying to suppress the annoying little ones or fighting against the big overbearing ones, is also critical in our mind to be resilient in times of challenges, because that's when we all need to be holding hands and working together. Something that's hard to remember in our day-to-day challenges is we deal with our small differences. One of the probably more obvious things that we talked about was backing up the house, was having a series of remedies. This is probably most easily thought of in terms of villages that we saw running out of water because they had one well to serve their community. Having backup supplies, the ordering